in the midst of this.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's start with a check of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has dismissed remarks from Greenland's Prime Minister Jen Fredrik Nielsen after he reiterated Greenland's commitment to Denmark. Asked about the comments from Prime Minister Nielsen, Trump said, "I don't know who he is, but that will be a big problem for him." Bill and Hillary Clinton say they will not be testifying in the House Oversight Committee's Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Chairman of the House Oversight Committee threatens to hold the Clintons in contempt of Congress for refusing to testify. The planet logged its third hottest year on record in 2025, extending a run of unprecedented heat according to US researchers and European Union climate monitors. US President Trump has now stated that a US takeover will be great for Venezuela as American oil companies formulate their re-entry strategy into the Venezuelan oil market. Independent human rights groups have stated that the death toll from the crackdown on protests in Iran has crossed 2,500. US President Donald Trump tells Iranians to keep protesting, says help is on the way as US multi strikes. Iran says US seeking pretext for military intervention. Officials say more than 2,500 killed in unrest. Trump says day of reckoning and retribution coming to Minnesota, where 37-year-old Rennie Nicole Good was killed by an ICE agent as protests continue in Minneapolis. Apple signs multi-year deal with Google to fix Siri with Gemini, which the company promised at WWDC 2024, but has since been delayed. Apple had promised 3 big upgrades to Siri to take on it on par with rivals like Gemini and ChatGPT. Alright viewers, according to reports now, Chinese customs authorities told customs agents this week that NVIDIA's H200 artificial intelligence chips are not permitted to enter China. Chinese government officials also summoned domestic technology companies to meetings where they were explicitly instructed not to purchase the chips unless necessary. This comes as the Trump administration gave a formal green light to China-bound sales of NVIDIA's second most powerful AI chips, but with some regulations. According to the regulations, NVIDIA will need to certify there are enough H200s in the US, while Chinese customers must demonstrate sufficient security procedures and cannot use the chips for military purposes. Joining me now in this discussion is Mitali Nikori, who is an economist from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Ms. Nikori, for joining me in this discussion. How do you assess the situation when China says that these imports are not going to be allowed?
So basically what we're finding is that the Chinese government has informed technology companies in China that there is a specific range of H200 chips which are manufactured by NVIDIA, and it is not permitting the use of these chips in civilian use. If these are required for defense purposes, then the companies can make a case with the Chinese government and inform them that there is absolutely no alternative.
But Trump has said that these chips will only be provided should they not be used by the military in China. That's a very clear specification that Trump has made, that the chips will only go on sale if China can assure that H200 chips will not be used in Chinese military work.
Exactly, which essentially means that these chips cannot be used in China for any purpose, because while the US is blocking their sale, China has also directed companies not to use them for commercial purposes. So essentially, Chinese companies will now be using locally manufactured chips, will be looking at those for the electronics, semiconductor, as well as AI applications.
All right. Where does US stand to gain from this chip export?
So essentially, what the US is trying to block over here is what we term in economics as a transfer of technology. The US believes that, restricting the sale of these chips to Chinese companies will essentially stop the Chinese companies from innovating further, especially in the AI war that is sort of on between China, the US, and other countries. And they feel that, because of the computing power of these chips, the superior computing power of these chips, China will not be able to innovate further on its AI technologies. However, China does have its own, AI chip development infrastructure, which is extensive. At this point in time, very little is known about it in, the mainstream US media and the Western media. However, reports are coming in from Tsinghua University, which actually point to the fact that China has made a lot of progress on its own chip manufacturing infrastructure as well.
Does US stand the risk of these chips being cloned by China?
Of course it does. I mean, but at this point in time, I would like to say that Chinese innovation and Chinese ingenuity has actually reached a point where we may not even want to term it as cloning, but rather, rebuilding and innovating on top of the existing technology that's available. So what China has done very well for many decades is, of course, clone many of the products, but they have come up with efficiency in their own processes. And even here, the fact that the sale of these chips will be restricted means that China will actually end up coming up with its own chips, which may in fact even be more efficient and higher productivity.
All right, sure. Mr. Korea, thank you for your assessment of the situation as of now. We are now going to move ahead, viewers. Turkey is in advanced talks to join a mutual defense alliance formed by Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, a move that could reshape regional security dynamics in the Middle East and beyond. The pact signed by Riyadh and Islamabad in September last year treats any attack on one member as an attack on all. This is a structure similar to NATO's collective defense clause, where Turkey is already a key member, with the alliance's second largest military after the US. Sources familiar with the discussion say such a deal is very likely. If completed, the arrangement would link three US allied Muslim nations and could place Turkey under Pakistan's nuclear umbrella. Saudi Arabia does not possess nuclear weapons, while Pakistan is the world's only nuclear-armed Muslim country. The original agreement had emerged amid heightened regional tensions following a failed Israeli strike on Hamas leadership in Qatar, which alarmed Gulf states. Now, Turkey's possible entry reflects shared concerns among Ankara and Riyadh over Iran's nuclear ambitions, while Pakistan too has faced rising security pressures along its borders with Afghanistan and nuclear-armed India. All right, we have retired Major General Sudhakarji joining me in this discussion. He's a senior strategic and international affairs expert from New Delhi. Sudhakarji, thank you very much for joining us here at NewsX World. Which among the three players is the most to gain from this new pact?
Very intelligent question, Kriti. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to your show. I personally feel that at the moment it's in a formative state. Turkey is yet to gain, yet to join. The talks are on. Uh, but the country which is going to benefit, and this is in relation to India's security imperative,
Yeah.
country which will benefit immensely are the countries without the nuclear weapon. They're Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Okay. And between the two, if I have to weigh the pros and cons, then it is Turkey which will have a substantial advantage and benefit by virtue of following things. First and foremost thing, this trilateral alliance or NATO-like alliance in the Muslim countries, Saudi Arabia's money, Turkey's advanced defense industry, and Pakistan's nuclear and missile power. These make a very deadly, I would say, a very heady cocktail. And in that cocktail, Turkey and Saudi Arabia would be riding the back of the nuclear capability and the missile capability that Pakistan has on it has as on today. Importantly, we may not have paid cognizance the ballistic missile capability which Pakistan has with a range of 5,500 kilometers. It can reach up to Mediterranean and beyond that, covers most of Europe. But dangerous thing which is happening is that the ICBM capability uh, which North Korea has, there are reports, there are small dots which are emerging in the open sources that the ICBM wherewithal are under transportation in a very, very clandestine manner to Pakistan. If that happens, well, then things are going to turn into a very dangerous and profile, and which will have a significant impact not only on India but entire region, the Middle East as also South Asia completely. So to answer your question in specific terms, it is Turkey which is going to benefit the maximum, followed by Saudi Arabia, because neither of the countries have got nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapon actually provides nothing. It is not an offensive weapon platform. It is a deterrence.
Yeah.
That deterrence will actually give them an added advantage which they don't have as of now.
Given that Turkey is also a member of NATO, how do you think it's going to balance its, you know, position in this trilateral pact?
It's all by design. You see, everything which is happening in the world order. Otherwise, why should Turkey come all the way from where it is, from Ankara to South Asia to Bangladesh? Today, Bangladesh is infested with Turkey NGOs. They are being supported by Qatar with funds. Now, the Saudi Arabia is offering all the money. So, basically, balancing out when you talk of, it is a very calibrated move, as per my analysis and research, that USA as the dominant power amongst the NATO countries is steering all the move. Whether it is Turkey participating in the stabilization, international stabilization force in Gaza, or participating or supporting Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, or becoming a prospective candidate of a member of the alliance, trilateral alliance amongst Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan, or participating in all activities which are inimical to a national interest of India in Bangladesh. All these are designed and calibrated, and they have got tacit nod of the dominant power USA. It may not be coming out openly, but my understanding is without such kind of a move, the balance of power, whether it is the region or the subcontinent, that is the South Asia, it willy-nilly has got a direct and indirect bearing and impact in the overall balance of power in the geopolitics of the world order. The balance of power that we are talking of essentially is driven by the geopolitical strategic rivalry, that is America is trying to push back very discreetly and quietly the Chinese influence and dominance that has taken place in past couple of, let's say, 3 decades or so. One, China having penetrated into the areas which are left vacant consequent to disintegration of USSR, is actually becoming headstrong and very, very resilient to continue to sustain the pushback against America. So, two superpowers or global powers will continue to keep pushing each other out, but neither of them will succeed because America is a declining superpower and China is having a cutting edge advantage in almost all the components of developmental matrix. So, besides this, there is a third sphere which is emerging, that is called as the Islamic fundamental or the radical Islamist forces are on the expansion spheres, and there is a gradual legitimization of these Islamist forces, namely Afghanistan, that is Taliban.
Yeah.
We have started legitimizing them. Then Syria, we have started legitimizing the non-state actor. Iran, whether you agree or not, in times ahead, after the potential strike that America and Netanyahu have been threatening, after that goes through, my take on the whole issue is that gradually, for the sake of Abraham Accord, America is going to put pressure on Iran and will start legitimizing the Hamas, the Hezbollah, and the Houthis, as also the fourth one, which nobody talks of, is Hadbil Itsaif, all the components. There is and look at the example in Bangladesh, what is happening. The Jamaitis, they have been given an open red carpet treatment. Openly, they are being welcomed to participate in the election. So what is this? What does it mean? The complete world order is actually gravitating towards legitimization of non-state actors. Who is doing it? America is doing it. Why America is doing it? America is doing it because America is looking for a couple of issues. One, components which will give steady inflow of wealth into America. Number one is oil. Number two is the defense industry market. Number three is the pharmaceutical industry. Number four, you have the drug money. And the fifth one, which is added in the 21st century, the new oil of 21st century, which is the rare earth element. So these are the things America is pushing for. And almost all the Arabic countries or the Gulf countries, wherever there are triggers or flashpoints emerging, they have huge reserves of oil. For example, Syria. Syria has got a huge reserve of oil, which America is trying to drill and harness and make sure that the steady inflow of wealth takes place from the oil. And talk about Bangladesh, there is a huge deposit of gas between Bangladesh and Tripura. Talk about Myanmar, there is a huge deposit of rare earth element. Talk about Nigeria, oil. Talk about the Sahel region in Central Africa, it is oil, minerals and critical minerals.
Okay.
And
General
okay,
Sudhakar, now as far as this pact is concerned between these three, how do you think countries like Iran, Qatar, Israel should prepare?
Again, the very sharp question that you are asking. Preparation is actually a matter. There is a bigger design, firstly. There is a bigger plan in place, which it is incrementally taking shape gradually towards a futuristic requirement. Futuristic requirement is that as per America and Israel, they are very clear that they will not accept the two-nation theory. Saudi Arabia is dead against this concept. It's if two-nation theory is not accepted, then the peace proposal is defunct. Okay, Iran definitely is demanding for two-nation theory. So there is a very little thin line which is getting blurred amongst the expectations and the demands of each of these countries. But at the end of the day, the might is right. Israel will always assert and continue with its doctrine of mow the grass from time to time, weaken all the tentacles, keep hitting the head of the octopus, and dominate the entire Middle East. Incidentally, if I may share, Kriti, the foreign relations of USA, I'm sorry I'm making this statement as a student of geopolitics, the foreign relations of USA, unfortunately, the truth is it has been hijacked. By whom? In Middle East, by Netanyahu. In Central Europe, that is between Russia and Ukraine war, it has been hijacked by the deep state of America. Not now, long, long ago. And to not very far back, you look at 1991, and consequent to that, there was a doctrine which has been hidden as a top secret doctrine of USA, unilateralism. What does it mean? That the NATO will continue to expand till it reaches the shores of Vladivostok. If that be the underlying kind of a hidden agenda, one can well understand and guess, it is anybody's guess, that will this mindless conflict in Russia-Ukraine come to an end? Similar questions come up for Middle East. Will Netanyahu bring this mindless conflict to an end? I don't think so. It will carry on this way because based on this depends the survival and the sustainability of America as a superpower. And it will depend on the all 4 or 5 things that I have listed out, because these are the 5 components as on today which will continue to provide the steady inflow of wealth into America, thereby revive and rejuvenate a sinking economy of the USA. Back to you, Kriti.
All right. Thank you very much, General Sudhakar, for joining me in this discussion. We'll leave it at that for now. Moving ahead now, viewers. Pakistan has entered into an agreement with a firm linked to World Liberty Financial, the primary crypto venture associated with US President Donald Trump's family, to explore the use of World Liberty's stablecoin for cross-border payments. The deal represents one of the first publicly announced tie-ups between World Liberty, a crypto-based finance platform launched in September 2024, and a sovereign state. It also comes amid a warming of ties between Pakistan and the US. According to reports, under the agreement, WLF will collaborate with Pakistan's central bank to integrate its USD1 stablecoin into a regulated digital payments framework enabled to function alongside Pakistan's existing digital currency infrastructure. All right, now moving ahead to news from India and US. India and the US have reviewed their bilateral engagement across trade, defense and energy sectors in a high-level phone call between External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. During the conversation, the two leaders discussed trade negotiations, critical minerals, nuclear cooperation, defense ties and energy collaboration. The call came a day after the new US ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, assumed charge in New Delhi. Gore has indicated that both sides are discussing the next steps on bilateral engagement and that a possible meeting between senior leaders could take place next month. Earlier, the US envoy also announced that India would be invited to join Pax Silica, which is a US-led strategic initiative focused on securing critical supply chains linked to silicon and advanced manufacturing. I request Mitali Nikore to join me back in the discussion here. She's an economist from New Delhi. All right, thanks, Mr. Gore, for continuing to stay with us in this discussion. All right. Yeah, how do you see the trade ties between the two nations now proceeding from here, and the questions of tariffs that continue to pose, a challenge, particularly for India?
So I think thanks a lot for having me on this story. So I think it's a very, critical time in geopolitics, and every conversation especially a conversation between a country and the US, and any of the ambassadors from the US or any of the representatives from the US is critical and redefines geopolitics in a way that, we didn't see yesterday. So each day is new, and I think this conversation is probably the start of a thawing of relations between India and the US, which is extremely critical at a time like this. I think the US recognizes that India, being one of the fastest growing economies in the world, is going to be one of the largest buyers of, oil, especially Venezuelan oil, and therefore it is in their best interest to continue working with India to build supply chains and to thaw the trade relationship. But at the same time, yesterday itself, the US imposed 25% tariffs on countries that do business with Iran. So therefore, the relationship still needs a lot of work. But I'm really glad that this conversation has happened between Minister Jaishankar and Mr. Marco Rubio.
Okay, how do you see the two nations cooperating on energy, because of the recent developments that we've seen in Venezuela, because of past precedents that have been set? India has continued to maintain that it will be importing from Russia as long as it provides cheaper oil and gas, which it does. Now with Trump having access to Venezuelan oil, of course he has excess of oil, including from countries like Canada, and US itself has exports in surplus. How do you think that conversation now could be different?
So actually, with the work that the U.S. government has done in Venezuela, with the fact that they are now looking at investing, and U.S. oil companies are looking at investing a huge fixed capital investment and setting up these facilities in Venezuela for actually refining the oil there. This is a long-term game from the U.S. This is a long-term move from the U.S. because in order to actually extract usable oil assets from Venezuela, it can take up to 5 to 7 years of investment from the US side. In such a scenario, it has to be, such that those purchases will happen. There will be revenue coming on the other side. If you're making investments of billions of dollars, you need to know that someone will actually purchase that oil. And India is one of the countries, being one of the largest buyers of oil, in the oil market. It places India in a very, good position to negotiate trade agreements, to negotiate any sort of deals with the US by guaranteeing that it will purchase oil from Venezuela, of course, as long as that meets our price requirements.
Okay, then. Thanks very much, Mr. Korea, for joining me in this discussion and helping us with your opinions. Viewers, we now move on. Now, Thailand's police have reported that emergency services in northeastern Thailand have rushed to the scene after a train derailment caused by a construction crane falling onto 3 carriages, killing at least 25 people and injuring 80 people was reported. The police stated that the accident took place on morning in the Sikhiho district of Nakhao, Ratchasima province, 230 kilometers northeast of Bangkok on a train bound for Ubon, Ratchathani province. The transport minister has said that there were about 195 passengers on board and that he had ordered a thorough investigation to be carried out. He added that the crane was working on a high-speed rail project when it collapsed and hit the passing train, causing it to derail and briefly catch fire. And that's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.